Whitefish City Council. Thanks everyone for attending remotely via WebEx. We understand it's not simple to do, and we appreciate you taking the time to participate in your local government. It's very important. Before we get started, I would like to ask our City Clerk, Michelle Howe, to please lead us in an attendance roll call.
Good evening. Councillor Quinnell.
Here.
Councillor Sweeney.
Here.
Councillor Hartman.
Here.
Mayor Mulfeld.
Here.
Councillor Hennon.
Here.
Councillor Fury.
Here. I'm here.
And Councillor Norton.
Here.
Okay, I'm going to go through city staff. City Manager Smith.
Here.
City Attorney Jacobs.
Here.
Planning and Building Director Taylor.
Here.
Public Works Director Workman.
Here.
Parks and Recreation Director Butts.
Here.
Sorry, Ben.
All set?
Say Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Welcome to your first meeting. Planner to Minnick.
I'm here.
And myself as city clerk, and then IT administrator, who is also the moderator, Chris Hunt.
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Before we move on to our business this evening, I would like to just take this opportunity on behalf of City Council as well as this community of Whitefish to, honor our dear friend who passed away this week, Herb Peschel, a long-standing community member and volunteer on numerous city boards. Herb served on the Board of Adjustments from 1998 all the way through this past week. I can't, in my mind, think of another individual who's volunteered for over 22 years on a single board, but Herb was that person. From 2002 to 2005, he served as the vice chairperson, and then 2011 through current as the chairperson. He also served on the Whitefish Lake and Lakeshore Protection Committee from 2007 through current present, and also served as the chair from 2016 up until his passing. He was a staunch supporter of this community for doing the right thing and for the protection of Whitefish Lake in particular, which is where I met Herb many years ago, and I always appreciated his involvement and his very dry sense of humor that would always roll the room when he interviewed for these various committee positions. So on behalf of the community and the City Council, I would like to just extend our condolences to Herb's family and wish Herb well along his next journey. Thanks very much for listening. I have a couple ground rules I'd like to lay out for this evening before I lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to be limiting public comment to 3 minutes, with the exception of the applicant, who is allowed to present his land use presentation for up to 30 minutes. Secondly, please provide comment during the public comment period. So item 3 on the agenda, to address items that are not advertised for a public hearing. So if you're engaged tonight to speak on the town pump application, please wait until I call that individual public hearing, which will be under item 6A of the agenda. As many of you are aware, the City Council, myself, city staff have received numerous requests asking for Dr. Bukacek to be relieved of her position on the Flathead City County Health Department Board. And I just want the public to be aware that all emails have been received after the packet deadline and not included under agenda item 9A, where we will be discussing this, have been forwarded to the City Council. And while these letters will not be read aloud, they are part of the public record, and the council has been made aware of each and every one of those letters. And then finally, while the city does not have control over who is appointed to the board, we will be considering at the end of the meeting writing a letter to the commissioners requesting their attention be drawn to this matter and action be taken under agenda item 9A if that's the desire of the council. But again, those letters will not be read aloud this evening. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Rebecca was kind enough to drop off this American flag for me remotely today, and I wanted to thank her for that. With that said, I'm actually going to ask Rebecca, do you mind leading us this evening?
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Whoops. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'll go ahead and lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
Like
America.
for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sorry, you guys.
That's okay. Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate that. We'll move on to communications from the public. To facilitate this public comment this evening, I'll need to turn the meeting first over to Michelle in case she has any written public comments that were submitted, and then she'll direct Chris Hunt to take any comments via remote login. And again, if you're here for the Town Pump public hearing, please wait until I call that item later in the agenda. Michelle.
Good evening. So I do have one comment from Citizens for a Better Flathead. They do address some corrections to the minutes. Their letter states, we would simply like to ask that you correct your minutes for the April 6th meeting under comments from the public to correctly reflect the comments we made by written letter at that meeting. It appears the excerpt included in your minutes omitted some key information by accident. They would like for the following to be replaced. Citizens for a Better Flathead submitted written comments encouraging the City Council to move forward with the 2020 Transportation Plan update. They also asked the Council to consider a revised timeline and work plan be developed by the Highway 93 Corridor Plan, so that this plan can best benefit from the findings and recommendations of the 2020 Transportation Plan update. Thank you for your consideration in making this correction to your minutes.
Thanks, Michelle. Chris, any public comment on your end?
Okay. Nothing just yet. I was going to let the public know in order to bring it to my attention when they are looking at their attendee list down in the bottom right corner of it, there's a little hand that they can press to show their hand, signifying that they want to make a comment, and then they can press that button again to lower their hand, or they can send a chat message to the host, and then I will recognize them.
Great, thanks very much, Chris. Are there any comments from the public this evening? I'll wait for you to let me know, Chris, and if there are none, we'll move on to volunteer board reports from the council.
Just trying to give everybody just a minute.
Yep.
I just received an email that Rabbi Rostin would like to make a comment. I'm not sure if it's for public comment or for the town pump. She didn't say.
Okay. I will unmute. Okay. Rabbi Rostin, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So is it okay to make a comment and address the matter of Dr. Bukasik?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for setting this up and allowing public comment remotely. I appreciate it. Tonight is the beginning of Yom HaShoah, or Holocaust Memorial Day. Through tomorrow, across the globe, people are lifting up the lessons of the Holocaust, witnessing survivors' testimony, and pledging never again. For the past 4 years, we've had public memorial programs in the Valley to educate our community and honor survivors of the Holocaust by witnessing their testimony and pledging to share their stories when they are gone. This year, if people want to participate in a public Holocaust memorial ceremony, they can log on to the Seattle Holocaust Center for Humanity, and they are doing them tomorrow midday. I want to address the recent public comments and activism of Dr. Annie Busick, board member of our county health department. I have two comments that relate to this particular time in the world and our country. First, as public officials, it is within your power to do what you can to stop someone who is fostering hatred and dangerous information. One of the primary lessons of the Nazi Holocaust is the importance of leaders and everyday citizens standing up and speaking out against hatred and the abuse of power by local officials. Dr. Busick can protest all she wants as a private citizen. Currently, though, she's a representative of county government, and she is promoting a position that is dangerous to public health and fomenting hatred. Second, it is incredibly offensive, absolutely mistaken, and offensive to survivors and the memory of those who died in the Holocaust. For someone to compare local government's restrictions to protect public health with the Nazi campaign of genocide. As a representative of government, it should be a disqualifying act to refer to a fellow local governmental official with Nazi terminology. The only purpose of such language and visual prompts is to signal to and inspire hate groups to become active within our community under the cover of her medical license and her position within our local government. So my message to you all, dear friends and city council members, is please do not sit and be inactive. You must take action and do what you can to stop such dangerous, hateful behavior of a public official. And second, please do not be silent. Please speak out against the dangerous, hateful statements of this county official. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Ralston. Chris, anything further on your end, or Michelle, for that matter?
Nothing that I'm seeing.
Not on my end.
Are there any volunteer board reports from those that have called in this evening? If so, please signify to Chris and he'll make you active. Not seeing any, I'll turn it back to the council. Any volunteer board reports from the council this evening? And similar to last meeting, I'm going to go individually this evening to ask you for comments or questions of both staff and the applicant as we move through our agenda, or any other agenda item for that matter. Frank, any volunteer board reports?
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Rebecca? Andy?
Nothing.
Melissa?
Nope.
Okay, Ryan?
Nothing.
Steve?
The planning board met last Thursday, the 16th. We approved 3 items on our agenda that we'll be seeing coming up in the next month.
Great, thanks, Steve. Rebecca?
Yes, I do have, sorry, you guys, I'm trying to, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so on our April 5th special session, I have 3 corrections under.
Those would be, Rebecca, those would be for the consent agenda when we approve the minutes for the April 5th meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, are we still on volunteer boards?
Yes.
Okay, never mind, sorry.
Quite all right.
And-
We'll move on to item.
Just, sorry, I did, it came in just a hair late on my screen, but Richard Hildner's hand did come up.
Great. Richard, welcome.
Let me unmute him. And Richard, you're on.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mayor, thank you. Mayor and council, thank you. I came late to the party, it looks like this evening. So I missed the public comment, and hopefully you'll take it now. And that is that I appreciate, Mr. Mayor, your and the council's steadfast resolution to remain steadfast in protecting our community against COVID-19. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate the comments, certainly. We'll move on to item 5, which is our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the April 5th 2020 special meeting minutes or the regular meeting minutes as well from April 6th. And Rebecca, I think you had comments.
From the special session on April 5th, there's 3 corrections. Under public hearing, 4th line, it should be scheduled. It just says there's no D at the end, Michelle. And in the next paragraph, 6th line, I think it should read purposes are. And then on page 26, the 9th line, it just says Lindsay, and I think we should add our last name, which is Schott, SCHOTT. And the other minutes were great. Didn't see anything to correct. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. With that said, I'll take a motion for approval on both items 5A and 5B of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda with the corrections.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Hartman. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your, excuse me, Michelle, do you mind taking a roll call?
No problem. Councillor Quinnell,
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney,
Aye.
Councillor Hartman,
Aye.
Councillor Hennon,
Aye.
Councillor Fury,
Aye.
Councillor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. That's unanimous. Which brings us on to our first public, and actually our only public hearing this evening, which is item 6A. This is a continuation from our April 6th meeting, and the public hearing does remain open. And this is a consideration of a request from Montana Commerce LLC for a conditional use permit to construct a gas station and convenience store located at 6045 Highway 93 South. The property is zoned WB2, which is our secondary business district. And this will be WCUP 20-01. Dave.
So I was passing the ball to Bailey, who had the presenter.
Yep.
Okay.
I am. I'm getting it going. Sorry.
No worries.
Where is this? Okay. So I have, I don't have a whole lot to add. I have a lot of the same pictures from the previous meeting. So if there's one that you specifically want to see, let me know. I know the applicant had one that they wanted me to add, so I did add that as well. So I'll just leave this up just because it's the nice general site plan of it. I didn't have a whole lot to add at the time of the packet, but I did want to comment on the comments that we have received today that I know Michelle is going to be reading into the record later. And just kind of, I pulled out some of the highlights from those comments, and I just like to address some of those comments that came in. I believe at my last count, I think we had 66 comments that were received after the council packet was sent out. So just kind of the highlights of them. I just want to point out, number one, currently there is no moratorium on development within the highway corridor, whether that's residential or commercial. We do have a number of projects that are currently in the process, whether it's building permit approval or CUP approvals that are going on right now in that area. Just a reminder that this property, it is private property. It is not city-owned property. Number three, the applicant does not have to show an economic need within the community for the CUP or conditional use permit criteria. So the basis of whether we need it or not is not a criteria under the CUP guidelines. Landscaping and tree density credits are required under the zoning regulations. And so this plan will be required to comply with all of those conditions and requirements, and that is reviewed at the time of building permit to make sure all the calculations are met. This is not a zone change application, so they're not changing the zoning on the property. They're not changing anything about the growth policy designation that's been that way for however long it is. The property has been zoned WB2 or some form of a similar commercial zone when it was in the county since the 1980s. We have no standards on limiting the amount of asphalt on a project. And actually, in fact, commercial projects are required to pave all parking and areas used for driveway access and everything. It's supposed to be 100% paved if they're utilizing it. The parking regulations do state that we can allow turf block or grasscrete to be used for infrequent or overflow parking areas, and that has to be approved by the zoning administrator, but it can't be used for actual drivable surface, things like that. And then the private street, it was built to city standards at that time. I believe Craig said that at the last council meeting. I know there was a couple comments thinking that it wasn't built to current standards or to city standards, but that private road is. And then finally, the city's current water system, it is capable of supporting the internal fire suppression system that will be required within the new building under our current fire code systems. So our system is capable of handling this building at this time. And I got that from the Public Works Director, Craig, who can probably talk later. So that's kind of what I had just to go over. I'm happy to answer any questions that have come up, as well as, like I said, the applicant is on the line this evening and can address anything further as well.
Thanks very much, Bailey. Are there any questions for Bailey or staff on the staff report or application this evening? And I'll start with Frank. Frank, any questions, comments?
Nothing at this time.
Rebecca, questions or comments for staff?
Yes. I already asked Bailey about whether or not the applicant would have any hardship if they allowed an extension on the project since we're going through the pandemic. And she said, no, there would be nothing to their adversity if they extended later after we were through more of the pandemic accommodations. I do have a little bit of question for I guess it would be maybe the engineer about the runoff. I spoke to the DEQ about an hour last week. It was difficult to get hold of people because they're all working from home, but I felt like I needed more information for myself about the risks of surface runoff and also if the tanks leaked, because we have quite a few older sites that are mitigated in the central part of town. And what I found was that those were from 1989 or before. We didn't have the same standards as we do now. And so I guess I do understand that there is a system for checking the tanks for leakage, but it's only once every 3 years. And every month the applicants or the business owner would be required to document any problems. But because this site is on a fairly steep slope and we know that the water is draining directly towards the hospital and a medical village, I'm wondering a little bit if someone could go into more depth about how the storm water retention and any spills in particular that would go onto the asphalt. Because when I spoke to the people from the DEQ, they said that can also be a contaminant, that's a surface contaminant that could go downhill.
Rebecca,
so is there anybody that can answer that question?
Thank you for the comments, Rebecca, and questions. Let's go ahead until we hold the public hearing. We're going to provide the applicant the opportunity to present as well as respond to any questions the council may have. So with all due respect, I'll just hold your question until we turn to the public testimony.
Okay.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy, sure. Questions or comments?
Yes, question for Bailey. There was something brought up in one of the submittals from the public about excessive availability of signage, given the fact that there's a lot of frontage on both 93 and Highway 40 being a corner lot. Is there any validity to that, or how would signage be treated?
So we do have standards in the zoning, and I was just going to pull them up here real quick. And it is in the highway district. It does allow, because, so generally we go off of, and I know some of you have seen this in other areas of town where you don't get to count both frontages for your square feet. We look at the front property. So if it's a corner lot, I know I'm just looking at the galleries building across from City Hall. That was one that was, they came back for variance in the end, but their signage was based off of the frontage of just the front property line, whatever that is determined. So in this case, the front of this property, because of the dimensions, we determined it was Highway 93, just based on the prevailing and how all the other properties are fronting along the highways, Highway 93. So that would be what their frontage is based off of. They do get a freestanding sign that cannot exceed 10 feet in height maximum. And then, and it's based off their property frontage. So because they have greater than 450 feet of property frontage, so I think that Highway 93 side is around like 612, I think, off the top of my head, sorry. They are allowed 3 freestanding signs. Now there's square footage allotments for each one, but they do, just based off of the property frontage, they could have up to 3 freestanding signs on the property where they are. Then there's also building mounted signs. They're allowed, because they're single tenant, they're allowed a maximum of 3 building signs. So those are ones attached to the actual building. And there's square footage that they're allowed with that as well. And that's just standard. That's not asking for a variance. That's just what's outlined in the code as what they are permitted outright.
Thank you. No further questions.
Melissa, questions or comments for staff?
No questions.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yes, I have a question for Bailey. Bailey, in the letter we received from Citizens for a Better Flathead, they talked about, let's see here, something about there can't be retail over 5,000 square feet, and that this building is over 13,000 square feet. They're saying this is against zoning regulations. Can you kind of explain the ins and outs of that to me as quickly as you can?
So Dave might be able to have to help with that one here. I do know that the definition, because I looked that up as well today, the definition of convenience store just has, hold on, let me find it here. It defines it as a retail establishment of up to 5,000 square feet, selling primarily food, packaging, limited amount. So I don't know what the difference is within the building of what would be considered the convenience store. It does not list gas or selling of those types of products underneath the definition of convenience store. So that would be the only caveat I would say, is I don't know what the interior square footage is of like the retail sales of, chips and sodas and all that kind of stuff. So that would be what I would think that 5,000 square feet is discussing, not necessarily the total building footprint of what's in there. But Dave might be able to answer that as well.
Yeah, I mean, for a convenience store, it would be the square footage of that, what's being sold as convenience store items within the footprint. So if there's office space or other uses, we wouldn't count that. It does get a little complicated because grocery stores are also allowed as a zone, have no restriction on sizes. So I personally wouldn't look at that as a violation of our zoning code.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Steve, any questions for staff?
I don't have anything further right now.
Thanks. I'm just going to circle back quickly. Rebecca, I didn't mean to move past you after your first question regarding groundwater and surface water management at the site. Did you have anything further for staff at this point?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, I am going to reopen the public hearing, which is again a continuation of the public hearing from our April 6th, 2020 regular meeting. I do understand that the applicant is present this evening, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that turn this over to Chris Hunt, who will have the applicants maybe speak to Rebecca's question and present anything further above and beyond what was presented, or perhaps repeat from the April 6th, 2020 meeting. Chris.
Okay, if I can just have Bailey refresh my memory on their names so I can get them unmuted.
Yeah, so I know Joe Murphy was going to talk, and then Dan Sampson and Jason Egline. I always say Jason's last name incorrectly. I apologize to him on the phone.
There they are. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, all three of y'all are unmuted at this time.
Oh, thank you, guys. Appreciate you taking the time to meet with us again tonight. This is Jason Egline. I'm the architect of record at CWG Architects and Engineering for Town Pump Whitefish proposal. Our address here is 650 Power Street, Helena, Montana, 59601. I'll go ahead and speak first, and then I think Dan, Sampson, and Joe will jump in after me. Thank you guys again tonight. It's greatly appreciated. I'd like to start by stating that both Town Pump and our whole design team's goal is to work with the city. We hope that you guys will see that in this presentation and our past submittal information, that type of attitude towards this project and towards the city. We started this project with the city through an informal meeting that led to a pre-app, which we submitted successfully. This project then went into the Architectural Review Board, where we completely redesigned the overall form, the massing, the materials of the project to meet the goals of maintaining the unique small town feel of Whitefish. We covered some of that stuff in the CUP application and the ARB application with siding and massing and things like that. The changes that came from the Architecture Review Board also included some site adjustments to work with the existing grades as closely as possible, while still maximizing the safety of both vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic to and through this whole site. Specifically, the project contains a dedicated pedestrian entrance, and I wanted to speak a little bit more on that this time. It is contained on the west side, which leads to a covered patio entrance on the opposite side of vehicular traffic. We're also going above and beyond with landscaping, which helps to create a more forested site and contributes to cleaner air through natural plant filtration and oxygen release. Town Pump does wish to build within the city limits. This approach is in line with the city's desire to preserve open space within the county, and I think it goes a long ways to reducing urban sprawl while preserving the feel of Flathead County better than any other option outside the city limits. I hope you guys will take that into consideration as you review the rest of the information tonight. Developing within the city limits also creates a stronger business-to-city partnership and tends to improve overall city taxes. More people and businesses in town kind of creates an additional efficiencies for public utility services. Generally speaking, fewer but larger utility systems are more efficient. So I think there's some other, minor benefits to working within the city to be able to create a partnership for an effective and profitable and smartly designed building. Having such day-to-day services spread around the city generally tends to reduce vehicular travel distances while improving access, as people don't need to drive as far and more people are inclined to walk to services if they're spread across the city. Otherwise, there's an economic impact of constructing a $4 million project from both an immediate benefit to the city as well as long-term tax revenue for the city of Whitefish. I hope you guys will see that this project we're looking at and the items that we're submitting will be taken into consideration with the decision. I just wanted to say thank you guys again for your time. Feel free to reply or comment with any questions or concerns. Otherwise, I'll pass off the rest of the presentation to Dan and Joe. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, this is Joe Murphy. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Success this time. So Mayor Mofield and City Council members, for the record, my name is Joe Murphy. I'm a Montana licensed professional engineer with Big Sky Civil and Environmental. Address is 1324 13th Avenue Southwest, Great Falls, Montana. I've been an engineering consultant in the state for 32 years, and my firm's involvement with this project includes the planning, design, and permitting of all the civil and site-related features. For example, we perform the site surveys, site layout, coordination with geotechnical services, coordination with MDT and with the traffic consultants, as well as the design of water and sewer systems and the grading and drainage features. I will like to jump right into maybe addressing the questions that came up from Rebecca, if I could. And if there's further questions when I'm complete here, I'll be happy to try to address those. The issue regarding first the underground tanks. In 1989 and 1998, there were different versions of underground tank regulations that came into the state of Montana, and they've been developing ever since that time. And today's systems are much more state of the art in terms of what they can do and what they can detect. Most underground tank systems, or just about all underground tank systems that I know of, are equipped with automatic line leak detection and automatic tank leak detection measures. That means that if there was a leak that would occur, for example, in the underground product lines, there is a secondary line around the interior line that if any of the product were to go into that interstitial space, it would send a detection immediately to the people who are keeping track of the records for that system. They'd be notified that the internal line was leaking into the exterior line, and they would immediately go out and address that release. The same thing with the underground tank systems. Town Pump employs a double-walled tank, and they have a brine-filled interstitial space. And if the brine ever detects any product within that interstitial space, it's an immediate detection and alert to the tank owner to get out there and address and correct the measure. So there are measures in place, or there are devices in place with all their underground tanks and underground lines to give that immediate line leak detection or tank leak detection. With respect to the stormwater, I will speak to that right now. We've got a pretty good site plan in front of us that's on the screen right now, and we have. And this is not required in most municipalities, but Town Pump has been doing it at virtually all the sites that I've been involved with. All the way around the fueling island area, the fueling island slab, there is what's called a valley gutter. And that valley gutter is going to catch any of the runoff, any incidental spills that if people are fueling up their vehicles and they splash a few gallons or several gallons of product onto that slab, and it just so happens to run immediately off that slab, that valley gutter will convey the drain, all the water, to a storm drain inlet. And if you're looking at that site plan, there is a blue line that leaves the fuel tank, the fuel island slab that is north of the building, and it runs mostly northerly, a little bit northeasterly. And all that product goes to an oil water separator with coalescers, which removes the petroleum hydrocarbons from the stream before it enters the site's on-site storm drainage and storage and treatment systems and detention system. That is, you'll see those blue lines coming off of every fuel island area. And there will be the same thing at each one of the fuel slabs. So where their big tanks are located, there's going to be a valley gutter around the perimeter of the tank slab that is going to catch any of that runoff and run it through the coalescers or through the oil water separators to remove the product before it goes into the storm drain systems. In addition to that, of course, all of the city's requirements will be adhered to in terms of storm drain runoff, storm drain detention, storm drain treatment, and discharge. So I hope that I've addressed those questions, and if I haven't fully, and there are further questions at the conclusion of my presentation, feel free to ask them. Right now, I'd like to jump into the two items that I heard at the previous council meeting as probably some of the more principal concerns related to the site. One of them was the traffic impact analysis and report, as well as the potential for a future roundabout at the Highway 93 and Highway 40 intersection. First, regarding the traffic impact analysis, as you're aware, Montana Department of Transportation is the governing authority for access to and from all Montana highway systems. As part of the planning phase of this project, I contacted MDT and asked if the proposed developer would be required to prepare a traffic impact study or if they'd be required to apply for approach permits to and from the Highway 40 or Highway 93 right-of-way. MDT responded that a traffic impact study was already completed for this property several years ago, and they added the original development would have generated much higher traffic volumes than the current proposal, and they concluded that another traffic impact study was unnecessary and the approaches may be used for the development as they are currently constructed. During the city planning board meeting, concerns were raised that the traffic impact study was nearly 15 years old and that traffic at the intersection has increased since the study was completed. For this reason, and even though MDT had already authorized use of the approaches, my client retained the services of traffic engineering expert with WGM in Missoula. The purpose was to review and update the traffic study based on current and projected traffic volumes. The new report concluded, and I quote, "The intersection analysis predicts acceptable traffic operations at both side access points with level of service C or better for all vehicles, and no interruption of traffic on the US 93 and Montana 40 approaches." Mr. Bankel is a Montana licensed engineering consultant. He has a specialized certification as a professional traffic operations engineer, and he is certainly well qualified, and he has decades of traffic engineering experience. When I reported to Mark that the city council had expressed concern that his recent report was not a current and comprehensive traffic impact study, he stated, "My recent report, which contains updated projected traffic volumes coupled with the original traffic impact study for this site, does in fact constitute a complete traffic impact study." Now I'd like to address the potential future roundabout.
Anyways.
I'll address the future roundabout at Highway 93 and Highway 40 intersection. And I would ask that Bailey change the exhibit that's in front of us. During the April 6th meeting, certain council members expressed concerns that the proposed site development could threaten or compromise the future construction of a roundabout at this intersection. I spoke with MDT's James Freiholtz about this intersection. He said there are no projects currently planned or scheduled. Jim said that there have been some preliminary discussions of future improvements to the intersection and what the improvements might look like. He explained that a roundabout has been considered as one potential option. After talking with MDT and having listened to the council's concerns regarding the potential future right-of-way needs at this intersection, my client asked Mr. Bankel of WGM to address this matter. I spoke previously of Bankel's qualifications as a licensed engineering consultant and his certification of a PTOE. He is clearly well qualified to address the right-of-way requirements for the roundabout. And I wish to emphasize these are only potential future requirements. WGM produced this exhibit that you have in front of you depicting right-of-way needs if a roundabout were to be constructed at this intersection. The exhibit shows that the extent of the right-of-way required is quite insignificant, as it would just barely cut into the southwest corner of the property with the sidewalk that's adjacent to the roundabout. So to summarize, we have consulted extensively with MDT and the qualified traffic consultant, and it is my professional opinion that additional traffic impact analyses are unnecessary. And it is further my professional opinion that Town Pump's traffic consultant has sufficiently demonstrated that this development will not jeopardize the construction of a future roundabout in MDT right-of-way. Mr. Mofield and Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, and I will try to address any questions, whether they be now or after Dan presents.
Thank you, Joe.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Mofield and members of the council. My name is Dan Sampson, and I'm the Construction and Development Manager for Town Pump. I reside at 1832 Whitman Avenue in Butte, Montana. I wanted to take a second to thank you for your time and consideration on this project. I know not only this meeting, but the last one was definitely a long one. So I appreciate y'all bearing with us and giving us the opportunity to present. That said, after reviewing the public comments and hearing the comments that we heard at the last meeting, I just wanted to take a second and kind of address some of those. We are a Montana company that is privately held by a Montana family who has lived and worked in this state for generations. While some may consider us franchise, we are still Montana born and bred. We hold typical Montana values, and as such, we have taken great care in planning and design on this project to ensure that we produce a project that both the city of Whitefish and surrounding community, as well as Town Pump, can be proud of. Our very first action on this project was to make contact with the mayor and city staff. The purpose of this was to ensure that the project was done correctly and to the standards of Whitefish. There was an opportunity present to try and push this project through the process prior to zoning amendments that now require this to go through a conditional use process. However, we did not take that road. We instead chose to work with you and address any reasonable, valid concerns that may come to light through the process. The manner in which we have approached this project, I would hope, would speak volumes about our integrity and values. Through this process, we've heard some concerns and a lot of opinions. As you can see from the information presented to you tonight, we have researched and tirelessly worked to address all valid concerns voiced by both city officials as well as the public during this process. As a recap, some of the concerns that have been brought up during this process are concerns about the TIS that was completed in 2005. Even though the permitting agency, MDT, deemed this traffic impact study adequate and did not require us to suffer the expense of additional analysis, after hearing the concerns of the public and the city staff, we took it upon ourselves to hire Mark Bankel with WGM. Had him apply the current traffic data and provide results. The results determined that even with the updated traffic numbers, traffic functions at all approaches at or above an acceptable level of service. Concerns were also raised about environmental protections, and as Joe explained tonight, as well as I did at the last meeting, we employ state-of-the-art protections that exceed state DEQ and federal EPA requirements. This is present not only in physical equipment, but also in operational maintenance. Concerns were also raised that MDT may be planning a future roundabout at the intersection of Highway 40 and 93. While it is not required of us to do so, in an effort to ensure that development is done right, and we again hired WGM to research this possibility and the impact that this project may have upon this potential future roundabout installation. After creating a model of the roundabout in conjunction with the model of this project, the results of these efforts prove that this development will neither preclude nor adversely affect this installation should this be the future course of action chosen by MDT. There were concerns brought up that we would in the future seek development of a casino at this location. In addition to the Whitefish code that prevents this from being a viable concern, I have gone on record in the past and will again tonight stating that we do not have any desire or intent to develop a casino at this location at current or in the future. You are welcome to make this a condition of approval, or we are happy to provide written confirmation to that effect. Concerns were raised about the existing mature growth trees. While it is true that there are some existing mature trees that will not be able to remain during this process, we have taken great care and time during this design to salvage all of the trees that can be salvaged while still meeting site design requirements. We have heard concerns that the implementation of this site would create issues due to large semi-traffic idling on site for long periods of time or overnight. I have reassured you through conversation and design that this will not be a truck stop and there will be no large semi-specific parking or services at this location. This location is designed to serve the everyday traveler, tourist, and local population. While there will be delivery trucks that deliver goods and supplies to the store, these trucks are no different than the trucks that currently deliver goods and supplies to the hospital complex or any other retail facility in the area. We also have heard concerns raised that our claim to being a good member of the community and state are potentially false. or that we have not provided any positive impact for Whitefish or the surrounding communities with our efforts. Not only do we strive to give back to our state and the communities in which we reside by being good stewards and neighbors, but we also give back via our charitable foundation. In the last 5 years, we have donated nearly $500,000 to the Upper Flathead Valley, consisting of Columbia Falls, Kalispell, and Whitefish. $51,000 of that has been direct donations within the city of Whitefish. We have presented technical data that proves that we have addressed all concerns and have complied with all code requirements. It is my hope that votes tonight are cast based on fact and technical merit rather than personal and sometimes emotional opinion. Again, I would like to offer my sincere gratitude for your time and consideration on this project. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan. While we have you still with us, are there any questions for Joe, Dan, or Jason from the council? Now would be your opportunity.
I have a question.
Frank, any questions?
Sorry.
None at this time for the applicant.
Rebecca? Andy?
No questions at this time.
Melissa?
No questions for me, but it looked like Rebecca was raising her hand, so I don't know if she's having problems with her audio.
She's just muted.
Yes, I am. Okay, I'm here now. Could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'd like to know how the delivery trucks will be fueling those tanks. What the entrance and exit will be. And there's a second question I have, which is the DEQ person I spoke to said that you have to have monitoring wells 1,000 feet away from these tanks. And would that be like Emerald Heights subdivision and the hospital? That's all.
I'll let the applicant.
This is Joe Murphy. Maybe I'll start. I think the intent is for fuel delivery trucks to use both of the primary accesses to get in and out of the site. Especially, I would guess that fuel delivery trucks coming from the east on Highway 40 would be entering the site from Highway 40 and going down through the site. Dan can correct me. I'm sure they'll probably use both points for both ingress and for egress. Both of the fuel tank pads, one of them is located immediately east of the store, just south of those 3 islands that you see. So there's plenty of room for the fuel trucks to get over there. And the other fuel tanks are located up on the north edge of the site, right next to the right-of-way there, north of the 7 islands that are shown in the middle on the north side of the site. I'm not sure what you heard from Montana DEQ about putting in monitoring wells within 1,000 feet of the site. I've never heard of that requirement before, and I guess I would like to know more about where the request is coming from, because I've never heard of monitoring wells being needed off-site.
Oh, okay. It was a person that deals with cleanup, and so I had to speak to 4 different people to get information. So maybe that wasn't correct for this one. Thank you.
I'm guessing that if you were talking to somebody in the cleanup division, they are the ones who only respond to a release after one has occurred on a piece of property. Most of the releases, just so you know, we do a bunch of environmental consulting as well. We probably have 30 or more active petroleum release sites that we're working on at this time. And of those 30 releases, I'm guessing that 25 of them are all releases that occurred back in the 1990s and early 2000s. You don't hear very many new releases from new facilities anymore. They do have pretty good tight measures implemented at them.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan. Andy, any questions for the applicants?
None at this time.
Did I already ask everyone?
I have no questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Steve?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Melissa?
I'm good.
Thanks very much. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be item 6A of our agenda. This is a continuation of the public hearing from the April 6th meeting. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over first to Michelle to see if there's any written comments that were not included in the packet that she can read into the public record. And then Michelle, if you don't mind passing that on then to Chris Hunt, who will ask those that have phoned in this evening whether there's additional public comments. Michelle.
Oh, good evening. So as of 7:18 p.m. tonight, we have 67 written public comments. So I will read those aloud to you tonight. All those written comments have been provided to the council for your consideration. The comments that are not read in full will be appended to the packet on the website tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday afternoon.
Thanks, Michelle.
No problem. Tracy Almos, no address given. She writes, please vote no on town pump. It is number one, unsafe. That corner historically is the site of car accidents. Number two, unnecessary. There are already 3 other gas stations on the same street. Number 3, ugly, welcome to Whitefish. Removing what is now a pretty view and replacing with an eyesore. Thank you for listening.
Is that all you had, Michelle?
No, I have 65, 66 more.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and ask Angela, is it required that Michelle read 67 letters as part of this public hearing, considering they were included in the council packet and made available to the council if they were submitted after the posting of the agenda? Dana, is Angie there?
Well, I'll unmute her. Angela, you're unmuted.
Sorry. John, I don't think it's necessary that Michelle read all 67 into the record as long as they're, they were provided to council prior to the meeting. They will be appended to the packet, and the public, can be available to, speak as well as provide written comments. So I don't think it's necessary that Michelle read all 67 into the record at this point.
Great. Thanks very much, Angie. With that said, I'll go ahead and turn it back to Chris Hunt, who will then ask if there's individuals who would like to provide additional public testimony via the remote WebEx login. Chris.
Okay. I do have one person so far, Joan Ehrenberg, and let me get her unmuted. And Joan, you are unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity and this technology. I don't know if you can see me or just hear me, but I'm grateful to have this technology and for all of your guys' work on this project. I live on Whitefish Stage and travel the awful intersection of Whitefish Stage and 93 and Highway 93 and Highway 40 daily. I'm concerned with access to the site in a myriad of ways. I do not ever see a roundabout coming. That's news to me, and I've been involved with MDT with talk of a roundabout at Whitefish Stage and Highway 40 and the rebuild coming up there. I see continually, daily, people heading east on Highway 40, making a left-hand illegal turn into the North Valley Hospital entrance. And I'm concerned that people will see the gas station, turn around, not know how to get there, and that will become a more popular route to access your property. I'm grateful that you're adding and respecting pedestrians and bike path routes. When looking at the site plan, it looks like every tree is gone on the interior of the property. And after what we have grown here to experience for the last, I've lived here 29 years, a beautiful forested slope, which I had envisioned that as the welcome of Whitefish and a visitor center or something. It's now going to be a gas station with cement surrounded by some young trees that will take a long time to grow. You have good old growth there. I would highly recommend that the council urge additional protection of the old growth existing trees on that property. And then I would also like to ask if you could consider, because it looks like there's a lot of land there, pavement, park and ride, or a stop for the snow bus, or a stop for the Glacier Park shuttle, and allocate some spaces for that usage. And then finally, I'm concerned about the sloping of the site and contamination running downhill into a soccer field or a hospital or whatever, or home. And that's a pretty big concern for me. And it sounds like you've addressed that in some areas. And I think that's about it. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Council, for your work. Oh, and my name is Joan Vetter Ehrenberg. I live at 744 Hidden Valley Drive. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, if there's anybody else that would like to make public comment, if you would either use the hand button located in the lower right below attendee list, or send something through the Q&A. I see I've got Justin Hawley. Give me just a second. And Justin, you are unmuted.
Hello, thank you for taking the time. Justin Hawley, 2448 Big Mountain Road. Thank you everybody for being on the call. And thank you for using a platform like WebEx. You know, in fact, I would love to see a lot more meetings be held like this, maybe as an additional option for folks. But anyway, you know, I remember several years ago when I moved to Whitefish, when I got to that intersection there, I was like, wow, okay, here it is. Here's the start of the town. And although, you know, the folks who, you know, want to put in the gas station here, you know, mentioned something about, you know, personal and emotional comments. It is a little bit personal and it is a little bit emotional. When you come into a wonderful town that you read about in magazines that's supposed to have this culture and this beauty, and the first thing you see is a gas station and a lot of pavement. I feel that, you know, there's a real opportunity to make that spot something really special for our town. And it'd be unfortunate to see yet another gas station. Because, I mean, frankly, I know that there isn't a need and there isn't an approval that has to happen based on need, like it was stated earlier, but I don't know if that's the best first use of that land. Furthermore, do we really want, you know, I think it was noted earlier, up to 6 total signs on this lot, 6 lit big town pump signs lighting up the sky. I just don't know if that's what our town should really be shooting for. And I respect, you know, I'm a business owner myself. I respect development, but I really respect, you know, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to build when it comes to our culture in Whitefish. So I would just ask the town council to consider, you know, that message that we're conveying when people drive into our town. By the first thing they see is a gas station with a bunch of pavement that was, you know, clear cut and some, you know, minor plants to provide oxygen, like the person said earlier. At any rate, I hope that you know, that you guys will take these comments into consideration, and I would encourage anybody else on the webinar to speak up and also give their opinions.
Okay, thank you. And I do have some more. Next, I have Sure, getting these right. I have Leo Keene, just a moment. And Leo, you are unmuted.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm Leo Keene. I live at 514 Pine Place in Whitefish. I've been very concerned about this proposal for quite a long time, going way back to when I urged the city council to try to do something to preserve the corner as a welcoming entrance to Whitefish. That opportunity was lost when the land was clear cut several months ago, or about a year ago. 5 acres, clear cut. They referred to old growth trees. There may be 20 left around the perimeter that may or may not be within the property boundaries of the owner. They may be in the right of way. And they're talking about losing still probably some of those, if not 10 or 12, leaving a few trees. What we have here is a proposal for 5 acres of concrete, bright lights, where we used to have a nice grove of trees. It could have been something very nice. It's not going to be anymore. But I feel like the proposed town pump doesn't do, as I've said in my letter, which you probably have read, it doesn't do anything for the betterment of Whitefish. It decreases the charm of our town. It's not a welcoming entrance. What it is sprawl. Clearly, it is sprawl. It's not a neighborhood. I think the sugar coating that the applicant uses to sway your opinions on this is nothing but sugar coating. It still is 5 acres of concrete. And Town Pump also has an existing station just down the road. They could improve that. They could probably for less money buy the property next door, which was the Best Bet Casino. I don't know what the status of that property is, but with the purchase of that property, they could certainly modernize their station and their entrance and exit to the station, which I understand is a problem. Just a thought. But I really do urge you, I don't urge you to put on 100 different, what do you call them, conditions. Put on 200 conditions. I still am against it. I think this is the wrong way for Whitefish to develop. And I also am not anti-development. I'm a builder too. I just don't think that this is a good development for Whitefish, and I would certainly, at this time, finally, be able to urge you to deny this conditional use permit on the grounds that it's simply not needed in Whitefish and it does not improve our town. Thanks very much for letting me contribute, and I don't think this WebEx format is real easy to use for me anyway. I had a hard time getting to this point. Didn't get to this point at all last meeting. I don't know how I managed to get to it this meeting. I just hit a whole bunch of buttons and finally got connected to the host. So here I am. I wish there was a better way of doing it. And that's all I have to say for tonight. Thanks for taking my comments into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And next I will get Aaron. And Aaron, you are unmuted and can now speak.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. If you would go ahead and state your name and address and then.
Yep. Hi, my name's Erin Flaherty. I live at 1060 Creekwood Drive. And I just say I drive this every day coming to and from the hospital, and it's a beautiful way to enter town. And I agree with, comments made earlier that it is a really nice welcome made to our town. I've lived in Helena, Billings, and Great Falls, and you know, what people comment on driving into Great Falls and Billings is the industrial nature of it. There's not a really nice entryway because there hasn't been careful thought out planning as to, you know, what is going to make the town look appealing. Now, my understanding is that we do have a Highway 93 corridor plan that is currently in the making. And whatever we decide with this process, I feel should be in alignment with that. I don't know how that works out for timing for approval, but whatever is passed on this is going to set precedent for that project going forward. A lot of the comments made about the excessive signage and the lack of trees, I feel need to be taken into consideration for any business along this corridor where most of the traffic enters through our town. My other question would be is with these bright signs, how does this signage go along with our dark skies initiative here in town? And I would like to say that it would be nice to see a new transportation study conducted by the city itself. It's nice that the developer did put the onus on themselves to get one done out of Missoula, but it would be nice to see the city corroborate that as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm not seeing any other requests at this time to speak.
Give you about 30 more seconds, Chris, and then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing if we don't have any additional comments from the general public.
Okay.
Not seeing any?
No, sir, not seeing any.
Thank you, Chris. Michelle, anything additional to add that you've received since we opened the public hearing?
Nope, I'm good.
Thanks very much. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for consideration. Given the public input that we've received, I would ask, in order to keep this meeting moving orderly and efficiently, that I would prefer if we started with a motion, either up or down, I don't care. And that'll at least give us a platform to discuss the pros and cons of the application in front of us.
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the CUP with, oh, I'll just stop there.
Thanks, Rebecca. Is there a second to the motion? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Motion was seconded by Councilor Hennon. Thank you, Ryan. Rebecca, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yep, I find 3 of the findings of facts I have difficulty with. One is the site suitability. We have a pretty strong brand in Whitefish where we often are placed on most desirable places to visit lists. And this is the entrance to our city. And so we've seen this over and over again with the public comment that to take away the opportunity to develop something there that's inviting and matches our recreational, beautiful destination resort seems to me a little bit of a travesty. I do also have concerns with environmental constraints. The water that flows down that whole corridor does go directly from this property to our hospital and the soccer fields. And we've already had testimony from medical village owners that are very concerned about their retention pond being full all the time. So with the impervious surface that will be created with this build out, I can't see how that wouldn't get worse. I also drove the entrance and around 4 times. I even crossed the property in my car. And I'm very, very concerned about the traffic safety. So I don't think it's appropriate to pass through something where the traffic study is 15 years old. I failed to ask if the person that worked at, is it WGM in Missoula had even come up to look at the property before they wrote the letter, but we deal with traffic studies all the time. And so we're more used to seeing people actually look at what works. So I actually placed my car in the turning lane. And I think it would be too dangerous with RVs turning left going south. I just have a lot of problems. I also have problems with the egress out of this property going through the medical village when people are possibly partially disabled, getting in and out of there. I don't think it's, I don't think they should be using that at all as part of their project, but I think that's what will be happening. And I guess the last thing is many of the comments that were provided were actually from people that have lived here a long, long time, who have actually done a lot of work quietly, but consistently to create Whitefish into the beautiful, clean recreation mecca that we all have come to love. And even in my own practice, I often have people that have circumnavigated the nation 2 or 3 times, and they always come back to Whitefish because of what we have created here. And so I think not following our own planning in terms of letting the South 93 corridor planning be completed, getting the transportation plan completed, looking at how the connectivity is going to go through that area. I think it would be shooting ourselves in the foot not to get those done before something of this size and impact is approved. I do think it would be devaluing the adjacent properties, and I would be concerned about the potential for contamination of their wells. So I am not voting for it. I think as a counselor, my job is to represent the will of the people that we were elected to serve. And I have not seen hardly any comments in favor of this. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'll go through the list here. Frank, any comments on the motion?
Rebecca, have you understand and are aware, and I know
Don't
most
have to talk to me.
These are counselor comments, Rebecca. I think I can talk with you if that's all right.
Well,
Mr. Mayor, am I out of order?
No, you're not out of order. Please proceed.
oh, okay.
I guess I appreciate everything you said, and in a large measure, I agree with you. I think this is a tough decision for us to make. You're aware, I know, that this property has been zoned as WB2 or some form of that for the past 40 years. All the property owners around that property have known that for 40 years. This is not a surprise. Did that go into your thinking at all in terms of how you're approaching this project?
Okay. Do you want me to respond, Frank? Okay. This is a conditional
Rebecca,
use.
Rebecca, it's perfectly okay for the council to deliberate following a public hearing. That's our role and responsibility here as counselors. So by all means, you're free to have this discussion with your fellow counselors.
And then I'll try to, I'm sorry, you guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a conditional use permit. And so one of the things that I love about our town is that I know that we're growing well because we have good planning and our building standards work, because when I walk around and see things that I didn't know were being developed, I go, wow, that looks great. So when I think about a conditional use permit, it is by grace. We don't have to approve them. And so I give the public will a little bit more power, I guess, when we decide CUPs, because they have to live with what we decide. So when I see enormous amounts of public input saying, please don't, stop, please, what are you thinking? You'll destroy the entrance to Whitefish. I think it's appropriate for us to stop and look at whether or not this is actually the right project for this place. I've been on the planning board, the Board of Adjustment, now I'm on council, so I've attended tons of meetings as well. Every pitch is an optional possibility until it's approved. So if the citizens of Whitefish don't think that this is right for this corner and we deny, the applicant still has another option to come through with another project. Maybe it will be smaller, maybe there will be some other amenities that might be more appealing to the public. But at this point, I just don't think it's the right project for the right place. And I think the public sentiment has shown that loud and clear.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy, comments?
I'll pass for the moment.
Okay, Melissa.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, this is a tough one. I think Steve made a comment at the planning board meeting about heartburn, and that seems very accurate concerning this vote. You know, it's given that it's in such a prominent location and it is at the entrance of the town, it does really, there is a feeling of the soul of Whitefish being at stake here. So, but I also understand that, you know, we operate within parameters and findings of fact. And yeah, so I think it's just going to be a challenging vote.
Thanks,
Where I'm
Melissa.
at right now.
Ryan, comments?
Yeah, you know, I will say that I think Rebecca makes some really good points. The public comment has been substantial for this decision. I will say that I did review and read every single email that people submitted. And I do think that that corner is going to be chaotic and the traffic there is going to be a nightmare. But Frank does bring up a very good point about the last 40 years and the designation of that land. This is a tough decision, and I appreciate what Leo said in public comment, but as Bailey said, you know, whether or not we need this gas station is pretty irrelevant. So for us to just sit up here and say that we don't need this, so therefore we're going to deny it, I don't think that would be appropriate. But that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Ryan. Steve.
Yeah, like I said before, this is a really, and what I'm echoing from other counselors, this is a really difficult decision tonight. And I also want to echo what Rebecca said. As counselors, we do have to be guardians of the public interest. And there's two sides to that we have to also consider. One side is, what is this project that's coming in now? Is this something that the public agrees with or not? And if they don't, it's our job to determine whether we can actually legally deny something like this.
We can.
And there is also a list of permitted uses that could be far worse on this corner, from a company that doesn't care about Montana, that's not from Montana, that doesn't give anything back to our communities, and doesn't care to try to make their project fit in as well as it can with our city. And I really want to applaud Town Pump for going the extra mile to do those things, to address the public comments that came up, including the traffic. And the reason why there was a traffic study done in 2005 was that there was a big commercial development that was proposed at that corner that would have generated more traffic than a gas station would. But we have to be mindful of that. And as counselors, we also have to be mindful of what the permitted uses are with just a building permit on that corner. And in terms of being a guardian of the public interest, we have to take that into consideration as well. I also, for me, part of the heartburn comes with people saying that this is the entrance to our city.
It is.
If you drive, it is, and right across the street is a boat storage facility that's in the county that we had no control over. Just past that is a hardware and lumber store on one side of the street, a casino on the other side of the street. You go down past that, there's a tool rental place. Past that is a car dealership. And then on the west side of the road is an overflow parking lot for that car dealership. So when I think about the entrance to our city, I'm not sure a gas station really does any more damage to what's already there, especially given the extent to which Town Pump went to make this fit in with what we want our city to look like. And in terms of danger from runoff because it's petroleum use, there are far, far more protections in place now for that than there ever were. Their other site, we know, has leaked into our river and probably continues to do so. It's right next to another gas station, which is right next to another medical facility. So, you know, it's really difficult it's very difficult for me to say no on this. And at the same time, I don't want a gas station right there. And neither do people. Neither do people in our city. But, well, that's the point, Rebecca, is that we can't just say no because we don't want it. We have to have findings of fact that say
I just went through them.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think that what you have put out there really meets the legal requirements for saying that they haven't met that those things can't be mitigated with conditions.
I guess I'd ask, do you think it's the right thing?
Rebecca, let's let Steve finish, please. I'm interrupted.
Sorry, John.
On the issue of grace and a conditional use permit, it is a grace for us to issue a conditional use permit. And at the same time, we can't be capricious in how we go about issuing that grace. We can't just come up with an idea that, oh, there's going to be too many signs. We know that the signage is going to be protected by our already strict codes for our city. We have a dark sky ordinance that they're not, the sky lights are not going to be shining up into the sky. And when we look at the public comments, the fear of things that we already have addressed in our zoning are the things that we have to read between the lines and understand where those comments are coming from, and understand that that our zoning regulations protect against a lot of the things that people are worried about. Okay? So the issue is, do we want a gas station on the corner of Highway 93 and 40? I don't want a gas station there, and I don't know that I can deny this conditional use permit.
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Steve. Any further comments? Steve?
No, that's all right now, John. Thank you.
Okay. Other counselors, comments? Any questions for staff? Rebecca.
I'd just like to review one thing for the council. Since I sat in on a lot of these hearings for years and years, the reason why we have planning in Whitefish is because the county asked us to take over planning. because 1/3 of their staffing was used to do urban planning for us. So we then hired our own planning departments. We hired a person with a lot of experience in a resort community similar to ours. We ramped up all of our planning. We have hired urban planners for that reason. We have multiple ways of planning, and one of them is our corridor plan for this region. So we as a council have extended the period of time for the 93 South corridor plan to be completed in September. This whole region would have been planned if we hadn't had the pandemic hit us at this point. We also have a transportation plan that is not done yet for this area. And so even though they've given a theoretical roundabout model, the whole reason Whitefish works is because of our planning. And it's meticulous and it's very detailed and it takes a long time. But we are the town that we are because we adhere to our plans. So to accept this project during a pandemic, when the applicant could have delayed and could have waited until we worked out what the community wants in terms of the planning for this corridor, I think is really short-sighted. And the reason why Whitefish has been named over and over again as a desirable place to visit and to live is because we're very conscientious in how we make our decisions. And so it's deeply disappointing that with this many comments during a pandemic and reasonable reasons, like no traffic study for 15 years, for one, environmental impacts that could happen to the neighbors, including our hospital, the light issue 24/7 right on the corner there. I am just literally disappointed because I thought we all were gonna kind of protect what we wanted to see for ourselves through this corridor planning. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy, Jake's gonna run and grab you a power cable for your computer.
I've got a power cable. I don't have the power supply for it.
Okay. Further councilor comments or questions for staff? I have a few questions. I'll direct the first to Craig regarding the private road on the, what would it be, the northwest to southeast corner of the property, the northern property line, essentially. Is there a reason we would not want that dedicated to the city as a public road?
Well, it doesn't serve any public roads, with the exception of Highway 93. It's currently a private road that connects to another private road. And quite honestly, we didn't really put a whole lot of necessity into it. It serves obviously the hospital and would potentially serve the town pump. And so it could be accepted or dedicated as a public road. It does meet the standard. It's 24 feet wide and pavement. It has curb and gutter. It has a storm sewer system. And so we could take over operation and maintenance of it, but ultimately it serves private facilities. And so we didn't see the necessity.
Was that a preference of the applicant, or is that your professional opinion?
That was staff's professional opinion.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, related to the updated traffic analysis that WGM Group completed, I believe it was WGM. Have you reviewed that updated study, and can you just provide us your professional opinion on their conclusions regarding level of service?
Yeah, I have reviewed it. Mark Van Cal has done a number of traffic impact studies for a variety of projects throughout Whitefish. For years, he's supported WGM on past projects they've done for the city. He's definitely a well-qualified traffic engineer. Just to back up a little bit, we did consult with MDT early on in this process, knowing that both Highway 40 and Highway 93 are state highways owned and operated by the state. And so we kind of took their word for the fact that they were comfortable with the past traffic impact assessments that were done, and knowing that this project would have fewer trips than the previously proposed project that the analysis was done for. And so based on the fact that they were accepting that and there were no improvements recommended during the previous traffic impact study, we did not require an updated one. I appreciate that they hired WGM and Mark Bankow to update it. I did review that. I found that they did take current data from MDT trip counts, and I confirm what Mark came up with in that TIS.
Okay, great. Thanks, Craig. Those were my 2 questions. Unless I hear any additional comments or questions from the council, I'm going to go ahead and ask Michelle to call a vote. Again, we have a motion on the table by Councilor Norton to deny the conditional use permit, item 6A of the agenda, and that was seconded by Councilor Hennon. Are there further comments or questions from the council before I ask Michelle to call the vote? Michelle?
Councilor Cornell?
Against.
Councilor Sweeney?
Against.
Councilor Hartman?
Against.
Councilor Hennon?
For.
Councilor Fury? Councilor Fury?
Looks like we lost him, or he's muted.
Andy?
Yes, you're being called now.
What's the
It's for or against the motion to deny.
Oh, where am I? Oh, there I am. I'll vote in favor.
And Councilor Norton?
Or
Looks like we have a tie.
I'll go ahead and vote to deny. I'll oppose the motion, and the motion does fail on a 4-3 vote, with Rebecca, Andy, and Ryan voting in favor, Steve Cornell, Melissa Hartman, Frank Sweeney, and myself voting in opposition. We'll need a new motion to what I assume would be to approve. We do not. This is an automatic approval if we don't act this evening with conditions, I would hope.
John,
Yes.
if we do a vote for, can we add amendments?
Here's how I would like to proceed. I would like to see if there's a motion to approve. If that motion gets seconded, yes, we will speak to each added condition individually, and we'll vote on each added condition individually before returning to the original motion, if that's clear. And I'll do my best to conduct this orderly and efficiently. Again, I'll remind the council.
Go ahead.
Certainly try for another motion for denial, but again, if we don't act on an approval, this does pass automatically this evening, given our timelines for our conditional use permit review process.
Mr. Mayor, I hate a vacuum under these circumstances. With some reluctance that I will make a motion to approve this particular CUP. If I get a second, I would like an opportunity to speak to it and to add a number of conditions that would be a predicate to my voting in favor of my own motion.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hartman. Again, the original motion made by Councilor Sweeney. Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to reiterate for everybody on council as well as everybody participating this evening that I too am not necessarily enthralled by the idea of having a gas station on that corner. That said,
I voted for it.
That said, all of the concerns that have been raised by the community, I have taken to heart, and I agree with any number of them. The problem I have is that I don't, based on my research, there are answers for each and every one of them. Everyone from the building is ugly or town pumps are ugly. Well, this isn't a regular town pump. And the reason that we put in the requirement that gas stations in particular have to go through a conditional use permit is because we wanted to ensure as a community that we were able to manage some of those kinds of presentations, I'll call it, in this community. I think Town Pump has done a pretty good job of working with our architectural review committee and answering most of their questions and coming with solutions to some of the concerns that they had. The private street does in fact meet city standards. If it didn't, I would have real problems here. The growth policy, whereas it provides a vision, is not a controlling or regulatory document. Zoning is. This property, unfortunately, has been zoned WB2 or an equivalent for over 40 years. All of the neighbors in that intersection has known that that was going to be a commercial development for over 40 years. The city of Whitefish, as much as I would like to say we had money to do something about this property or that we could buy it, quite frankly, we don't have the money to do that.
We could get it.
Not at this point, Rebecca, and I believe I'm entitled to the floor until I finish. Water pressure, in fact, is more than sufficient. We're planning for increasing that water pressure at that end of the city based on future growth. Currently, we cannot deny it based on our inability to serve that property. As much as I would like to say that the pandemic and the exigencies that it has caused this city and community is not, unfortunately, a reason that we cannot act on this matter. We must move forward and move and act on it, Rebecca, whether we like it or not. And if we don't act on it, it gets approved. And in terms of, highest and best use, that's all an argument that we can all make about what it is. It's not my highest and best use for that particular property, but it's privately owned. It's the reason that we couldn't control the logging that's going on currently or would take place now. We don't have an ability to control that. I wish we did, but we don't. The other opportunities that could be used, that property could be used for, as Steve alluded to earlier, without even so much as a conditional use or our being able to condition it in any form or fashion, are numerous, many, and would present a much worse problem for our entrance to Whitefish, in my view. That said, I would like to make a series of motions to amend the conditions to make my motion even palatable to me. First one I'd like to make is I'd like to amend condition 12 to state that the second story mezzanine must be used only as corporate office space or storage.
So we're going to go ahead and take these added amendments, starting with number 12 individually. Again, we're going to vote on these individual amendments prior to the original motion, just so the council's clear with that. Frank's friendly amendment or added condition number 12 states the second story mezzanine must be used only as corporate office space or storage. And I believe the applicant addressed this at our last meeting. Is there a second to that friendly added condition?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Further discussion? All those in, Michelle, please call the vote, please.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor, if you can hear me.
Yep. And Councilor Norton? Councilor Norton? Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Frank, the floor is yours.
I'd like to add in a condition number 13, in order to preserve the Montana Department of Transportation right-of-way to acquire additional right-of-way to the extent it would be necessary, and to protect the mature trees, particularly on the west portion of the property, and to allow for more extensive space for screening and rebelting, the building must be relocated not less, I don't know how to, I'm having a hard time coming up with a specific footage. What I would like to say is that they must be moved at least far enough from the west property line to protect and ensure that the existing mature trees on the site be in fact protected and be preserved from damage during construction.
Is there a second to the friendly added condition number 13?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hartman, I believe. Further discussion? Michelle, can you please call the vote?
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
That carries unanimously as well. Frank, the floor is yours.
Mr. Mayor, I would add a condition 14 reinforcing the condition 13, which has just been passed or agreed to. The existing mature trees located along Highway 93 South and Highway 40 must be preserved and protected to the extent they are healthy and not in danger. And to the extent that they are or become damaged or diseased for any reason at any point, they must and shall be replaced with a large caliber tree in as possible a close location to the same spot as the tree that was removed.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second to what will be added condition number 14?
I'll second.
Second. Oh.
Seconded by Councilor Hartman. Further discussion? Michelle, please call the vote.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye. Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
That carries unanimously. Frank, the floor is yours.
I would add an additional condition 15 to as follows. The bicycle pedestrian path along the northern boundary of property highway 40 must be constructed to city standards. The bicycle pedestrian path from the northern boundary of the property to Highway 40 must be constructed to city standards and 10 feet wide unless the Montana Department of Transportation requires a narrower path.
Is there a second to friendly condition number 15?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Discussion on the motion. This would be a separated bike ped path along 93 connecting to the Highway 40 intersection. Michelle, please call the vote.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
And condition number 5 passes unanimously. Frank, the floor is yours.
Excuse me, I think, Mr. Mayor, what we were adding was condition 15, which is what we just approved.
That's correct. Sorry, Frank.
That's all right. I just wanted to make sure the record was clear. I would add a condition 16. A casino, as defined by the Whitefish City Code, may not and shall never be operated on any portion of the property.
Is there a second to what will be condition number 16?
I'll second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Hartman. Further discussion?
I just have a question. Would that need to be placed on the deed?
I'll defer that question to Angela.
Steve, I don't think it would need to be necessarily placed on the deed. The conditions from the property. So.
Okay.
Michelle, please call the vote.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Added condition number 16 passes unanimously. Frank?
Mr. Mayor, I would add a condition 17 at this point, that not less than 5 rapid electrical vehicle charging stations or supercharging stations must be installed on the property.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Aye.
Seconded by Councilor Hartman. Further discussion? Frank, does your motion imply that these would be built upon build out, I should say?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion? Michelle, please call the vote.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Condition number 17 carries unanimously. Frank?
And just as a preview, I've got just a couple of more, Mr. Mayor, that I would add. Actually, 3. Number 18 that I would add would be all refuse containers, except for those in the service islands, must be converted to animal-resistant containers at the time the city's garbage contractor is able to service such containers.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
I believe that was Steve Cornell who seconded the motion. Discussion? Michelle, please call the vote.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Condition number 18 carried unanimously. Frank?
I would add a condition 19. Containers for recycling cardboard and other currently recyclable materials produced on site must be provided.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Further discussion on what will be condition number 19? Michelle, can you please call the vote?
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councillor Hennon,
Aye.
Councillor Fury,
In favor.
Councillor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Condition number 19 carries unanimously. Frank, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would add one more. Condition number 20, there shall be no overnighting of over-the-road trucks or trailers on the site.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second?
Was that Steve Quinnell?
Yes.
Thanks, Steve. Further discussion? All those in favor of what will be condition number 20? Michelle, please take the roll call.
Councillor Quinnell,
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney,
Aye.
Councillor Hartman,
Aye.
Councillor Hennon,
Aye.
Councillor Fury,
In favor.
Councillor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And condition number 20 carries unanimously. Anything further, Frank?
From me at this time, no.
Mr. Mayor, John, this is Bailey. I know you guys replaced condition 12. The condition 12 that was currently there was that it terminates within a year. Are you guys going to keep that? Because that would actually be a condition 21 at that point, just as a side note.
Regarding the second story mezzanine?
No.
No, there was already originally a condition number 12, and Frank started with 12.
Okay, so we're at 13 through what will be 20.
Correct.
21.
21.
I just wanted to make that note. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Bailey, it was always my intent that that 12 stay in there anyway. I just thought it belonged at the end, and that's what I was going to end up doing. But thank you so much.
Anything further from the council? I do have a question for Dave or Bailey. Is there a way to condition this motion to regulate internally illuminated neon signs on the premise?
John, our sign code already prohibits internally illuminated signs.
And why
talking about
so many of them through town?
There's existing grandfathered internally illuminated signs that are still up.
So internally lit signs, Dave, for example, you're driving by, you look in the window and it has a neon sign for Coca-Cola. Those are not prohibited?
There are some of those that are allowed in the sign code. Let me just look that up real quick.
Yes.
Oh.
John, while we're waiting, can I just ask a question about the vehicle charging stations?
Please.
Would those be the fastest possible? I'm not real clear on the different kinds, but I know that there's at least 3 different kinds. When we say supercharging stations, are we assuming the most modern technology we can get at the time?
I'll defer to Bailey or Dave. My only knowledge of charging stations are that there's a couple variety. One being where you plug in and it technically requires an overnight charge to where the batteries are at 90% capacity. It's typically what you fill them to. Or there's supercharged stations that allow electrical charging within literally 20 minutes to a full charge. And those, I believe, the latter were implied with the motion Frank made.
That's correct.
Thanks.
That's
That's
correct.
what I thought. Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
All right, John, I'm ready to answer your question. So within the highway district, which is where this is located, neon advertising window signs are permitted. What the code says is beer signs, open signs located within the windows for view by the outside traffic are limited to 4 signs per business with a maximum size of 3 square feet per sign. That's already permitted within that B2 zone.
So if it was the council's desire, I certainly can't make motions. I just bring it up as a potential way to mitigate those types of advertisements and signs. Can we, if the council desired to, could we add a condition restricting neon signs altogether? And maybe that's a question for Angie.
John, I think you could. If you're, attempting to mitigate some of the potential detrimental effects of neon signs, I think you could make that a condition.
Which would be the rationale.
Yep.
But again, I cannot make motions. I just throw that out there for consideration of the council.
I'll make a motion to add that amendment. Forbid it,
Dave, can you suggest some language here for Melissa related to the code?
Yeah, I would just have a condition that states that no neon advertising signs within the windows are permitted.
Okay. Is that all right? Do I need to state that?
Or advertising or open signs, I guess, is broader because those are the 2 types the code mentions, advertising or open.
Okay. Do we want to?
I wouldn't mind, Melissa, I wouldn't mind if you read that into the record as a formal motion, please.
So I move to add an amendment prohibiting any illuminated interior signs or internal signs. Do I need to specify advertising or?
I mean, the ones that are permitted are the neon types. So I would state neon advertising or open signs are permitted.
Okay, so amendment that prohibits internal neon signs. Do I need to add the advertising versus, sorry.
Dave, help her out here. Can you please provide her an articulate motion?
Yeah, so it'd be what, number 22 or number 21 with the other one moved to 22 that would state that neon advertising or open signs within a window are prohibited.
Okay. So neon
visible from the outside might be more clear because it could be in a door. Neon advertising or open signs are prohibited from being visible from the outside.
Okay, do I need to restate what he just said or can we use that language?
I would prefer if you state it, please.
Okay. So an amendment where neon internal signs are prohibited, including advertising.
Dave, is that sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's close.
I think it's sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion? And I believe this will be condition number 22. Is that correct, Michelle?
That is correct.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Further discussion on what will be condition number 22. Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hartman?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
And added condition number 22 carries unanimously, which brings us back to the original motion, which is to approve item 6A of our agenda, which is consideration of a request from Montana Commerce LLC for a conditional use permit to construct a gas station and convenience store located at 6045 Highway 93 South, on property that is zone WB2. This will be WCUP 20-01. Are there further comments from the council? Melissa.
I just wanted to say that, you know, one of the big dilemmas in this vote is just that, you know, in voting in favor for the town pump development is the reality that there are permitted uses that would really be much less appealing than what's being offered, and at least we're able to work with somebody in a way that gives us more control over what this is going to look like. And so while it's far from an ideal circumstance, it's certainly a better option than many of the permitted uses that could come down the pipeline.
Thanks, Melissa. Other comments? Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that because we take our time and we look at these things, doesn't mean that we're not listening to the public comment. We have to, I just want to reiterate that in being a public steward and protecting the public interest, sometimes we have to make tough choices. And this is one of those times. And I think all of us are kind of holding our noses a little bit looking at this, even with the new conditions. It's a very difficult decision to make.
It wasn't that hard though.
Further comments from the council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll make one comment. I'm not here on video, but I am here on audio. I think Steve's argument against Rebecca's motion was very eloquent and very well stated. And while I supported Rebecca's motion, I could argue this either way in my own head. And while public sentiment is obviously overwhelmingly opposed to it, as Steve said, that's not necessarily legal grounds for us to deny a conditioned use. And that's something that I grappled with in my head all day today, and I think we probably all did for the last 2 weeks. And when I come back to it, if I have to look at arguments for or against, I have to look at the arguments for are considerably stronger than the arguments against. In reality, we have a couple of things that we would argue against it. One, we don't want to see it, which is not a valid argument. Yes, we maybe don't want to see it, and I personally don't want to see a town pump there. I'll be very, very honest about that. I don't want to look like the entrance to every town in Montana, quite frankly. And I look at what happened at the corner of Highway 40 and Highway 2, and I look at the Smith's gas station across the corner, and I look at the town pump, and I look at both of those and I go, what a mistake. That said, I will commend Town Pump, and I think they have worked really hard to try and bring us a project that is palatable, and I think they are probably working out of a norm that they have normally not worked in the past. That's my guess. And so I will commend them on that. But all that said, at the end of the day, I will support the motion. I do so reluctantly, and I do so knowing full well that probably the only people in the community that are going to be happy about this tonight are the property owner, probably their attorneys, and Town Pump.
Thank you, Frank. Further comments from the council?
I'd like to make one.
Rebecca.
I just would like the council to remember we represent this town and the people that live here. We are heavily invested in, because what we've done with our planning is absolutely beautiful. And we have natural amenities that everybody in the world wants to come and participate with. But ultimately, we are responsible for leaving behind a legacy that we're proud of. And so almost every single one of you said that you hate to do this, but you're going to do it anyways. And I just think sometimes you should just
Okay. Yeah, that's
like remember that we are actually capable of saying no, with the assumption that maybe someone will come back with even a better project. We had open space bonding brought up by one of our commenters, and perhaps maybe there would have been a way to have like a welcome center in combination with a town pump on the backside, so the impact wouldn't be quite so startling when people come to town. So I've seen so much of our public process, and I really sometimes think you have to take a leap of faith that maybe if you say no, someone will come back with a better idea, something that fits a little bit more with what the town is hoping to achieve in terms of creating an inviting entrance to Whitefish. That being said, I'm only one counselor, so thank you for listening. I'm done, yeah.
Further comments from the council? I have a few comments. Number one, I've sat up here for 14 years and I've always tried my very best to best represent our citizens' desires. Have I been perfect? Certainly not. Have we all been perfect? Definitely not. But I know that we do this job honorably and nobly. We always try to cast a vote that is in the best interest of our community, but also, quite frankly, keeps our city out of litigation. And this would have brought that. When I think about when the city lost the donut lawsuit, which terminated our planning jurisdiction on the exterior of town, there's two trains of thought on how we can still influence growth. Number one is we just say, well, we're not going to extend services and we're going to let Kalispell continue to creep north and annex, or we're going to continue to allow the county to approve projects with simply a building permit and a septic permit, like we saw across the street from this development. If we were to deny this project this evening, I could pretty much guarantee you that it would be located within 150 feet to the south and to the east on the vacant land at the corner of Highway 40 and 93 with zero influence by the Whitefish city government. We just conditioned this application with 10 strong conditions that, in my opinion, make it a much better project. I hope Town Pump would agree, and also protects the interests of our community to the greatest extent practical that we can, given the zoning and development standards we have on the books. To Steve's point, he absolutely is correct in the fact that you look at the list of permitted uses that could go in on this property with a building footprint of less than 10,000 square feet, and they simply need to apply for a building permit and a permit or approval from the Architectural Review Committee. That's it. No public hearing at the planning board, no public hearing at the city council that allowed us to craft conditions here tonight that helps address some of our objectives that have been defined in our 93 South Corridor study, our growth policy, and other planning documents. Indeed, this is a hard decision, but exactly to Andy's point, careful what you ask for. And you don't need to look far down the road at the intersection of Highway 2 and 40 to see what we could have ended up with mere 200 feet to the south of this current property. So with that said, I'm going to ask Michelle to call the vote, please. Thank you for the council for your thorough deliberation this evening and the public's input as well.
Councillor Cornell?
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councillor Hartman?
Aye.
Councillor Hennon?
Against?
Councillor Fury?
In favor.
Councillor Norton?
No.
And the motion does pass on a 4-2 vote with councillors Hennon and Norton voting in opposition. Thanks very much to staff and the public who came out tonight, as well as the applicants. And we're going to go ahead and take about a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 8:51. Everyone back and ready to get back to business here?
Yes, sir.
Ready and back.
Michelle, maybe just do a quick roll call, please.
Councillor Quinnell,
I'm here.
Councillor Sweeney,
Here.
Are there two?
Councillor Hartman, Councillor Hennon,
Here.
Councillor Fury, Councillor Norton. So we're still waiting for 3.
Present.
Oh, 2.
Andy, are you here with us?
I'm here.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think Andy is on, maybe he's just muted, but we're going to move on to item 7A, which is communications from our Public Works Director, a consideration to authorize to bid the water plant expansion project and purchase sole source filters. This will be resolution 20-13, allowing the city of Whitefish to purchase items under a sole source method solely for the acquisition of an contact absorption clarifier treatment process for the water treatment plant. Greg.
Thank you, and good evening. See if I can share my screen here. Oh, I don't know what screen I brought up. Are you guys looking at the council packet?
No, Craig, it's blanked out right now. So you're either on the wrong screen or the out of program over it.
Well, not a big deal. You guys have the council packet. And this staff report begins on page 198. I'm sure everybody is aware, as we've talked about over the past year, the city of Whitefish currently operates a water treatment plant. We're capable of treating up to 3 million gallons per day. That's the firm capacity as rated by the Montana DEQ. Although it may only be a concern for a couple of days during the peak demand season, DEQ has required the city to apply for a deviation to operate above our firm capacity. And that is in order to allow any water main extensions, subdivisions, or any future growth. This deviation, as we know, is only a temporary solution, and the final solution will require an increase in the treatment capacity at the water plant. The city has selected Morrison and Merrily, or MMI, as I will refer to them, throughout the staff report. That occurred back in June, and they were hired to design and oversee the construction for our planned water source and treatment capacity expansion project. In addition to the expansion of the water plant, there are several other elements that will need to be accomplished to expand the capacity, and I'll discuss each of those in a little bit of detail. Of course, the first portion of the project is the actual treatment capacity expansion. We reviewed several options and considered a few for the expansion of this capacity at the treatment plant. The 2 most logical solutions included additional Trident package treatment units and converting the water treatment plant to a membrane filtration system with a different type of filter. Each option evaluated included redundancy to meet DEQ firm capacity standards. Adding ultraviolet disinfection was also considered in the evaluation in order to enhance disinfection and better utilize the available capacity of the water storage reservoir. The membrane filtration options were costly to purchase and operate, but did not require a building expansion. I'll note that during the evaluation, we did not consider how to implement the technology while maintaining water treatment operations. And so it would be likely that in order to continue to treat water while installing the membrane filters, at least a temporary building footprint expansion would be required. It would also require very careful staging with selective demolition in order to make that work. Implementing the Trident units similar to those in operation would have several advantages. Probably most importantly, the familiarity of our operations. We currently have a staff that operates the water treatment plant, and additional Trident filters would definitely be familiar to our operations staff. Continued production of high quality water with relatively simple operation and maintenance requirements, and of course, continuity of operations between the new and the old units. Expansion of treatment capacity using the existing Trident technology was ultimately determined to be the most appropriate solution for the city. Adding Trident package units to the water treatment plant will require an expansion of the treatment building to the southeast. The existing units will also require some minor rehabilitation in conjunction with the expansion project to achieve the city's goals. These options have been developed and are included with the plans, which are included in your packet. The current project includes space for 4 1 MGD units, with only 2 units being installed at the current time. So essentially, we'll be going to 5 MGD firm capacity with the ability to add 2 more units up to 7 MGD. The Trident units that we are currently in service were provided by US Filter, which owned the technology back in 1999 when the plant was constructed. Currently, the Trident brand is owned by a company called Westech. In 1999, when the water plant was built, the procurement of the existing Trident equipment was sole sourced, and Whitefish adopted a resolution to confirm our application of state law that was needed at that time. The state law is similar today, and an updated resolution to move forward with the sole source purchase process is included in this report, and that can be done in accordance with 184.306, Montana Code Annotated, as well as ARM 2.5604. The next portion of the project to talk about is the lake and intake pump station. Increasing the raw water source. Got back to my Philly days there, water. Increasing the raw water source intake capacity at the plant will also include retrofitting new pumps, piping, valves, and electrical controls into the existing pump station. This is the pump station that exists down at Mountain Harbor, along with the line that goes out to the lake. The raw water transmission main from the lake has a reported capacity of 4.75 million gallons per day, and that does not require upgrading. The project will, however, require the installation of a parallel finished water main. The single existing 18-inch main is not large enough to convey the full build-out capacity of the plant, and so a parallel 24-inch main up Reservoir Road, or really down Reservoir Road, because this will be the finished water being returned to distribution, will be required in order to provide adequate transmission into the distribution system. The final portion of the project is a sanitary sewer extension. As water demand increases and the city relies more heavily on Whitefish Lake, the water plant will subsequently require more frequent backwashes, and the amount of backwash waste will increase considerably. 4 options were identified to address the need for additional backwash capacity. And ultimately, the installation of a gravity sewer to the plant was determined to be the best application for the backwash waste. This option does not restrict treatment capacity at the plant and easily allows for future Trident expansion up to 7 MGD. In terms of schedule, final plans have been submitted to DEQ for their review and approval. And assuming council authorizes staff to proceed with the bidding, it's our intention to award the construction contract back by the end of this July. This will allow construction to begin by the end of August. The entire schedule is based on experience with similar projects and does allow for any. It's also presented in your packet. The intention again is to complete the project by next summer. The original estimated cost for the group of projects was between $10 and $12 million, and we have put together a detailed construction estimate at this point with contingency We're looking at about $9.6 million for the construction of this plant. With engineering, we anticipate that we'll be under that $12 million number. With all that said, staff has completed our review of the final plans and specifications for the water source and capacity expansion project, and we feel this set of plans represents the best interest of the city of Whitefish. Therefore, it is recommended that staff be authorized to bid the water plant expansion project and the enclosed resolution be approved in order to allow the purchase of the 2 Trident filters using the sole source method. And I'm assuming we can make that as one motion. But Angie, if you feel differently, maybe we can just let us know. That's all I have.
Thanks, Craig. Angie, would one motion be sufficient? Yes?
Sorry.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm off mute. I would prefer that you guys did too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Or can I have a motion for approval? 2 motions preferably.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 20 forgotten the number. A resolution adopting a portion of state law allowing the city of Whitefish to purchase items under a sole source method. Is that what we need? Is that the first motion?
I think you would need as the first motion to authorize to bid the water plant expansion project.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, and then resolution 20-13.
Okay. Then I'll move to, authorize the bid of the water plant expansion project.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Hennon. Further discussion? Michelle, mind calling the vote, please?
Councillor Cornell?
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councillor Hartman?
Aye.
Councillor Hennon?
Aye.
Councillor Fury?
In favor.
Councillor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
That motion carries unanimously. Steve?
Yes. I'd like to make another motion to adopt resolution number 20-12. Is that what you said? Is that the number?
13.
13, sorry. A resolution adopting a portion of state law allowing the city of Whitefish to purchase items under a sole source method solely for the acquisition of contact absorption clarifier treatment process for the water treatment plant.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Hennon. Further discussion? Michelle, please call the vote.
Councillor Cornell?
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councillor Hartman?
Aye.
Councillor Hennon?
Aye.
Councillor Fury?
In favor.
Councillor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And that passes unanimously as well. We'll move on to item 8A. You have Dana's written report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana?
I have one question, Mayor.
Rebecca.
Good job on keeping track of everything, Dana. Thank you. The 2 questions you asked us to deal with were closing the city beach launch.
Yes. So I'll just address that on that, Rebecca, if you don't mind. So what we're looking for is feedback from the city council. The park board has control of the boat launch and city beach and has given that authority to Maria, but we would like to hear your input. It's a really difficult time to make decisions today. But because we're waiting for Governor Bullock's reopening of Montana plan to come forward. But if you have input on that item, that would be great. And then the other action item or question I'd asked for an answer from the council on is the budget due date moving from May 4th to May 18th. The other information in there about the housing authority, that is completely up to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that as well.
I'll chime in here, Dana, and give you my 2 cents. Right now, folks are allowed to utilize the boat ramp if they go online and self-certify, correct?
That is correct.
And that option would remain in place for individuals.
That is correct. They can access our online AIS testing and get the code to the gate, and they can launch themselves. And we haven't seen a significant number of, we've had no decons last May that were required, and it's just a slower period of time during the month of May. So we were looking at, how the month of May be impacted. And right now, Maria and I have discussed, we're looking at maybe doing this in 2-week increments to see kind of where we're at, because what we're seeing is things are changing so fast.
And I'm fine with that, particularly with the recent information that Angela forwarded from Helena, what they're dealing with. And then secondly, the fact that on May 1st, State Park is opening. So it's not like the public don't have access to Whitefish Lake. They can still access via Montana State Park. So I agree and support the decision to defer another 2 weeks, and I'll turn it back to the council. Any comments?
I agree.
I'll chime in quick, Andy, or I agree, but what I will say though is boat traffic for April is exceptionally high on the lake currently. I've been down at my beach quite a bit, and there's a lot of boats on the lake for this time of year, far more than we would normally see because people have time to be out there. But I would be fine with 2 weeks, and once we get to May 1st and they can launch at State Park, then they're going to have an inspection there. And then I will say that all of the boats look like they're local boats and are probably regular whitefish boats. So we're not seeing people coming from, mussel infested areas and launching their boats and getting out on Whitefish Lake at this point.
Thanks, Andy. Other comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor, this is Frank. I can concur with that recommendation. I'm happy to go another 2 weeks.
Related to item number 2 in Dana's report, I'm fine extending the budget schedule. Are there any other comments, or do others disagree with that?
No disagreement here.
Fine with me.
Great. And then thirdly, Dana required some clarification on whether or not we wanted to partner with Whitefish Community Foundation, I believe, to create a fund to provide one-time partial rent relief to Whitefish renters. Is that correct?
So what it is actually, it's a program between the Whitefish Housing Authority, the Whitefish Chamber of Commerce, and the Whitefish Community Foundation. They came together and created a fund that provided one-time emergency rent payment, partial rent payments, $300 to applicants. They did use all the funds that they had received and actually cut into a little bit of the Housing Authority's other funds. But they still have other people outstanding that haven't applied. They are looking at extending the program, but I think there's mixed feelings about that of at least the Housing Authority's board. I just wanted to more or less give you information. I know we've received a few comments of writing off water and sewer bills. Right now, we are not shutting off service. We are not charging late fees. But we really can't write those off because we have to be able to make our bond payments. In fact, Craig just presented to you and he just approved for us to go out to bid for the water treatment expansion project. We have to bond for that. And there are some significant requirements of our revenues. So instead of looking toward that, I was trying to figure out other ways that we might be able to fund, if you guys wanted to provide funding to our citizens that are struggling. And through that, Montana law allows us to provide a donation to the Housing Authority, which then they could turn around and use it for whatever programs, whether it be to replenish funds they've used for that or to provide an expansion of that program, which I believe they would do if we gave them funds. Again, it's up to you guys. Our budget's not, I would not say that there's budgeted funds available. I would say that you have cash reserves you could cut into to use for that program. This is a little bit about my budget update, but I'll touch on it right now since this would maybe be important for you. The governor created a task force to look at how the $1.25 billion from the CARES Act will be spent throughout the state of Montana. We have representation on that task force with the League of Cities and Towns. And we talked about that today as a group of city managers, what we wanted to see, and provided Tim Burton information about, what he should propose. And one of those is our water and sewer bills that, people might need support through that. And if we provide that funding to these businesses or individuals that are needing funding, that it would flow to the city for that purpose. Same with property taxes and potentially other fees. So it was more or less just wanted to provide you the information since we have been getting the questions. And I'm sure you've also been hearing, questions about whether or not we'll be writing off water or sewer charges. But at this point, I would not recommend doing so. And instead, if you're so inclined, to support in other ways.
Thanks, Dana. Any comments from the council?
I have a question for Dana, Mayor.
Sure, go
This
ahead,
is Rebecca. Dana, do you think our general fund could accommodate a $30,000 donation to help with rent subsidies?
I would be really cautious about $30,000. We have not run the figures of how this is going to impact us. One thing that we're anticipating is that property tax, which we've collected a good portion of, but that those might not be collectible. And with the risk of a recession moving forward, after this prolongs, those are our reserves to operate all of our fire, EMS, police, Parks and Rec, admin. So, and if we had reserves like we were hoping to get to of 20%, I would absolutely say, yes, you could cut into those during this time. I think 30,000 is a lot. I think the Community Foundation provided $10,000. So did the Housing Authority and Chamber, maybe. But I do know a lot of it was private donations that were actually made. So, if anything, I kind of threw out an idea of $10,000. Again, I don't know if the program's moving forward at this point. But if it does, I wouldn't go over $10,000. We don't want to be laying off employees because of a donation, right? So we also think of those that are here as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Any other items arising between April 15th and April 20th?
Yeah, so other than the governor's task force, I thought I'd just give you a couple updates. We did submit our request for public assistance from FEMA. You're not guaranteed any funds that will come back to the city, but we are tracking our costs to date. We're looking like we're about $5,000 in right now on our response. Whether or not we'll have all of that reimbursed through the public assistance funding will be yet to see, but we will be making those requests. The city has set up an incident command team. Right now, in our emergency operations plan, the health department is our incident commander for this, but you can have an incident command team within an incident command team. And for the city, we wanted to use this as an opportunity to train city staff. Today, we met with the mayor and deputy mayor, Angie, myself, and Joe Page, who is our incident commander, to start the process and identify the objectives of our plan. So we'll be meeting with department heads and running through this entire process. And I think it's a very good opportunity for us to train for potential situations that might come up in our future. Hopefully they don't, but at least we will have gone through the process. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I do anticipate either tomorrow or Wednesday that we will hear from the governor about a phased reopening plan for Montana. I hope, that what he does is taken, I believe he will take a very safe and prudent approach to it. However, we can still, as a city, look at how we might be implementing that. So from a city hall standpoint, until we have the protective measures in place for our front office staff, we might not be reopening, even if other businesses can. We are looking at putting up plexiglass on a temporary basis for our front office workers. We have masks already, cloth masks acquired for those individuals. that will be donated to the city, Grace, which is awesome. We also will be looking at purchasing thermometers, forehead, the ones that read your forehead, so that people would potentially be checked before coming in. And also anybody coming in might be required to have masks. We're still in the planning process of what it might look like if we open. Those aren't set in stone, but that's likely where we're leaning toward. Because the safety of the public and safety of our staff is obviously our top priority right now. There are other funding options out there that we're monitoring. CBDG, CBDG, yeah. CBDG? Yeah, I'm saying it right. They also are getting extra funding from the CARES Act. We haven't heard what that might look like, but we'll be watching for those funds as well. So I believe that's all I have to update tonight.
Thanks very much, Dana. We'll move on to item 9. I might let Dana address this, and it's item 9A of multiple letters that we received regarding Dr. Lukacek's position on the Flathead City County Health Board. Dana.
Great. Thank you, John. I'll just give you a little background history here. In January, I was meeting with Doug Russell, the city manager of Kalispell, and in looking at Montana code, we realized that the city of Whitefish should be party to the interlocal agreement that the city of Kalispell has with the Flathead City County Health Department and the board. So in Montana law, there is a requirement that cities of 10,000 or more have their own health department, but there is a caveat that they could actually have an interlocal agreement with the county and create a city-county health board and health department. It's a way to save costs and serve the same population. So that's what the city of Kalispell did. Actually, it looks like back in 1976, but their most recent interlocal agreement was from 2004. So in January, prior to all of this situation happening, we were in the process of getting interlocal agreement prepared so that we could add the city of Whitefish, looking at potentially adding the city of Columbia Falls because they are right now a third-class city. But as soon as they become a second-class city, they would also be required to have a health board. So right now, Whitefish, we are a second-class city. So we are required to have a health board. So we are in that process. It looked like back in 2010, discussion was about, in minutes, was that discussion was about that you had to be a first-class city. In reviewing the Montana code, it does look like we are eligible to be partnering with the county because we're a second-class city and need to have a health board. So obviously that all got put on hold temporarily. So we did not approve the individual who is under question and being requested to be removed from the board. We have no authority managing or placing members on that board, but we hope to in the future. So I think that that's an important part of all this, that the council can recommend to the county commissioners and the city of Kalispell to remove that member, but at this point we cannot take any action. But hopefully in the future, once the pandemic slows and we can work with the health department and get an interlocal agreement signed, we will have that authority.
Thanks, Dana. Any questions on this? I'll start with Frank.
Mr. Mayor, a couple of things. Dana, thank you for looking into that. I think it's a very important thing that Whitefish become a member or participate in the interlocal agreement on the health board. How we missed that, why we weren't eligible is, I know, it's like, but we need to do that. I think it's very important. This has been, in this project and in this valley, there's no way for us to have our own health board and have any, shall I say, influence over health issues. The valley's too big, it's too diverse. We need to do it as a county, and so I think that's a good thing for us to do. That said, I would certainly be in favor of and support, if the council so agrees, a letter to the commissioners and the health and the current board, health board, that Dr. Budacek be removed for her malfeasance is the only thing I can think to say about what she has done and how she has operated. As a public citizen, she could operate one way. As a member of that board and in a position of authority on the health board, you don't get that same opportunity. What she has done, in my view, has in fact endangered lives. It endangered the community. It is in direct opposition and to the governor's directives and orders. I think that in and of itself would provide a ample support for her being removed on that matter alone. So if the council was so agreed, I would certainly recommend that, and I would also be happy to work with Angie on drafting a letter to the board.
Thank you, Frank. Unless I hear otherwise, we have the support of the council to move forward with a letter.
I am in 100% in agreement with what Frank said.
Thank you, Ryan.
Me too.
Same here.
Okay, Andy?
Definitely.
And Rebecca?
Yep, pretty deeply disappointed in her behavior, especially that people's lives are at risk. So yeah, I'm in support of at least discussing what our options are as government for the Whitefish citizens.
Thanks, Frank, for the offer to draft the letter. I could certainly sign that myself. Dana could sign it. I think it should come from the elected officials, or we can distribute for signature, which this might be a bit challenging given the fact that we can't really distribute a letter for signatures right now. So unless I hear objection, I'll just go ahead and volunteer to sign that, maybe with Frank as well. Okay. Thanks very much, Dana. Thanks, Frank. We're going to move on to councilor comments, and we'll go ahead and stay with Frank. Frank, anything to include this evening?
I know, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that there'll be no credit given and probably no credit deserved. The vote we took tonight was very difficult on the development on the corner of 40 and 93. I appreciate Town Pump's willingness to work with us. At the same time, I think we all agree that that's certainly not been a vision we've had for that corner. And I appreciate Rebecca's position and where we are on this. And I think as stewards of the city and of our constituents, one of our obligations is to ensure that the laws are applied equally to all and do what we can to protect the community. And I appreciate that. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Frank. Rebecca, comments this evening?
Well, it's going to take me a while to process what just happened, but so I'm not going to discuss the CUP, but I would like people to actually use these masks. I've been walking around town and evaluating our population, and nobody's really wearing them. And if two people wear them, that means this person's not transmitting, and so is the other, and we're not spreading it. And so people are not really adhering to the 6-foot distancing, which is the absolute minimum. And so I've worked in healthcare for a long time, over 3 decades, and every single doctor that I have in my family or that I have talked to, every nurse is terrified of this disease. So whatever information you're getting, the people that are the frontline workers are very, very scared about what's coming to Montana. So please follow the CDC guidelines, follow our city county health department guidelines, and do your part. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andy?
No comment.
Thank you, Andy. Melissa?
No comment.
Thanks, Melissa. Ryan?
Nothing from me, Mr. Mayor.
You are on mute.
Is that my turn? My internet is, I have nothing to add.
Anything further from staff? I have nothing this evening.
Nothing.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.